Guys, this is very exciting. We are here with the all-new Isuzu D-Max Blade. It is their new top-of-the-range performance Isuzu D-Max. Meant to go head-to-head with cars like the Toyota GR Sport. They even mentioned the Ford Ranger Raptor. And so this thing has quite a lot of off-road specific upgrades, actually quite a huge amount, and it's remanufactured locally here in Australia. It actually comes down the production line as an LSU+, which is second from the top. At the top is the X-Terrain, and then it is locally remanufactured. They change a lot of parts, and I'll take you through all of that today. But being the top of the range means that it is more expensive, about $7,000 more, while they have a drive-away offer than an X-Terrain, which was the previous top of the range. So this thing here will set you back 76,990 Australian dollars. So today I'm taking for a full review of the new Isuzu D-Max Blade, tell you everything that has changed, because like I said, it is a lot. And I'm going to let you know whether this thing is actually better than a Ford Ranger Wildtrak X, a Ford Ranger Raptor, and of course the Toyota GR Sport. So let's get into it. Alrighty, let's talk about the way that this thing looks, because quite a lot has changed. You get this new grille insert that's apparently 2% less aero efficient. However, there's actually better cooling behind it, so it's actually better for the air to hit the heat exchangers, which is a lot of information, but I don't know, apparently it works very well. Otherwise, the bumper is actually the same, so you can pull it off and easily fit a bull bar. That was one of the questions I asked, because I think that's actually quite important. Hidden under here is a new LED light bar that throws light apparently 330 meters, which is about 100 meters better than what you'd get on the regular bi-LED lights. What else is new? Well, you'll notice that this thing is wider. It's also taller. That is a hallmark of any Walkinshaw job, really, or any off-road focused vehicle. You kind of want a raised ride height and track width for off-roading, and you'll see why in a second. So because of the suspension lift, it's actually 29 millimeters taller. It has a wider track by 32 millimeters, which goes from 1570 millimeters to 1602 millimeters. And to cover the wider wheels, it's actually got bigger wheel arch flares, 23 millimeters wider on each side. So versus a regular LSU, it's actually 46 millimeters wider. And you could definitely tell it does have a very imposing look to it. Otherwise, it is the same D-Max, apart from these stickers that are everywhere. And I've got to be honest, I don't love them. You got these very bright bi-LED headlights and some fog lights here as well. I actually think it's a really, really good looking Ute. You can get this thing in 4 different colors. This one here is orange, but I think I prefer white. And of course, there is more underbody protection for off-roading. So they've moved the 1.5 millimeter steel bash plate to this 3 millimeter steel bash plate. It's actually quite a serious one. And they've also added these recovery points, which are mounted to the body in 3 different ways, the chassis. So it can hold up to 8 tons at 35 degrees. So this is probably the most serious off-roading tether points I think I've ever seen in my life, but actually very, very impressive. Let's check out the side. Alrighty, let's talk about the sides, because actually quite a lot has changed. You'll notice these huge fender flares here. They're going for a hexagonal shape. Apparently that's the shape of an Isuzu D-Max. Don't really see it, but that's okay. You have these new Australian built 17-inch alloy wheels. They're blacked out as well, and they're wrapped in some really good Goodyear Wrangler all-terrain tires. They're actually quite a new tire, these DuraTrack RTs, and very, very good for off-roading. Genuinely very, very good. And inside, we'll talk about this more when we're driving, you'll also see new, very red dampers, and that's because they've changed from a monotube to an Australian-specific and Australian-tuned twin-tube damper, which is apparently better for off-roading. But like I said, the damper itself is 29 millimeters taller, so this thing has a better ride height and better ground clearance. You have blacked out mirror caps here. I wish it had a 360 camera, and that would have been really helpful for some of the off-roading we've done today, because it's been pretty hardcore. You're gonna notice this metal side steps are actually very, very good indeed. Keyless entry and go, no tinted privacy glass, which is a shame, I think. And then of course at the back you get those same twin tube dampers. However, it is of course still leaf spring suspension, and that means that it actually retains a pretty good payload. That was one of the things that they wanted. 894 kilograms for that, and still a 3.5 ton brake towing capacity, which a lot of you will love to hear, because these are used to drive all around Australia. And this is also quite unique. Again, fabricated in Australia. It is a Blade inspired sailplane, that's what they're called. And of course the decals on the side, but I don't like those. Let's check out the bum. It wouldn't be a Ute if it didn't have a derriere, of course, and this thing is actually pretty nice. I do like these mostly LED tail lights back here. Still have halogen bulbs, which, you know, at almost 80 grand, it's yeah, you can do early days, I reckon. The only real differences for the back of this thing are actually the badging. So Blade there, 3-litre turbo diesel, all black, Isuzu D-Max as well, and more stickers here. Again, it's a bit much on the stickers, I think, Isuzu. You've also got this, which is just a plastic little set for yourself if you want it. And like I said, 3.5 ton braked towing. And I was kind of worried that that would mean that the ride was pretty like in a Ford Ranger trimmer, but actually it's not, and you'll see that. And like I said, you got your reverse camera, but really disappointing that this thing does not have a 360 camera. The camera itself is totally fine. Drop this. Oh, it's a nice and soft tailgate. It's also quite light thanks to these gas struts. And then you have quite a lot of room in here. So thankfully it's still very much a useful truck. So first of all, you get a factory fitted tub liner, which is nice. The tub dimensions are 1,570 millimeters long, 1,530 millimeters wide, 1,130 millimeters between the wheel arches, and 490 millimeters deep. And that means apparently you can put 1,040 liters in the back of this thing, which is probably fine. I don't think it's class leading, but it's pretty damn okay. Let's check out the interior. Alrighty. Let's talk about the interior. That was quite a nice thonk, but I do have to start with the negatives, which are some of the build quality stuff. So there's still this seam that kind of runs across here where the plastic just doesn't line up. Been in pretty much every Isuzu D-Max I've been in. And then there's other small things that you just start to notice. For example, when you put up the window all the way, the whole area just kind of expands and closes. It's a bit interesting. It's something I haven't seen in other competitors. Otherwise, it is a really nice place to be. And of course, there are some Blade specific stuff. For example, there's a little plaque here that says Blade number P03. So yeah, you get individually numbered plaques. Towards the end of the year, they're going to be building 400 of these, and then they will ramp that up at Walkinshaw. They just want to make sure that all of these quality stuff are all fixed. Not that that's touched by Walkinshaw, but they're still working on it. There's more Blade specific stuff. The carpets, they say Blade on them. These leather seats, they're actually re-embroidered here in Australia to say Blade on them, on the headrest. Otherwise, they're the leather accented seats that kind of just feel like vinyl seats, to be honest. And you get Blade door sills as well. So a few different reminders that you are in the Blade. You're in the samurai motherfucker Blade. The thing I do love about the Isuzu D-Max is actually all the storage. So you have these split glove boxes, though. That one just drops, whereas the other one is dampened. That's interesting. Up top, you have a large storage area, which is quite nice. You've even got a little storage area to the right over here. And the door bins, they're not the biggest, so the center armrest is nice and soft with heaps of storage on the inside. Technology took a really big step up when they changed over to this facelift earlier in the year. So you get this digital display up in front of you that does show heaps of information. It's not the nicest display out there, but like I said, it's plenty of information. And then here you get a 9-inch infotainment display with wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto. You can see things like an upgraded TPMS, tire pressure monitoring system, and some really cool off-road stats when you are off-roading. There are some touch buttons down here, which I don't love, if I'm being totally honest, because when you're driving, it's kind of hard to touch. And the other thing I don't love either is that the screen is super washed out. So on a bright day like today, I can barely see it, and the screen is at full brightness. Still, props to these digi analog air conditioning controls. Weirdly, the best in the industry, frankly, fantastic. And this thing blows really cold and really quite fast. So great for Outback Australia, actually. Get a couple of USB-C fast chargers, a 12-volt socky wocky. Got your 4-wheel drive controller there. We'll come back to that a bit later. You have this storage area here, which I really wish would have been a wireless charger. Don't know why it's not, just seems like a waste of space otherwise. You have some more 4x4 controls, which we'll come back to, and your heated seat controls. And yes, these seats do get very hot. Oh, and I love this. So these two cup holders, they're massive and they will de-lid anything. But thankfully, you do have cup holders on both sides in here, and you can put smaller coffee cups in there. So really great storage. And of course, the steering wheel. It's a beautiful leather steering wheel. Honestly, it feels so good to hold in the hands. I really like it. And of course, all around you, and it does have a very, very good sound system. So yeah, I'm not going to say it's the nicest interior. Like I said, there are some real quality things that I really wish would have been ironed out by now. But overall, it is still a really nice place to be. Is it almost $80,000 nice? Well, you let me know down in the comments section below. Let's check out the back seats. All right, so before we get into the back seats, like every good Ute, you can actually just really easily lift this up and you get a bit of storage space under there, and that's on both sides, which is cool. You can of course also pull down this backrest, and then you have a bit more space, not very much, but you do have access to your top tether points, which is very good. But let's get in. Big grab handle here. So I'm 5'11". This is my normal seating position. I have a little bit of legroom. It's not the best, but it's something. Toe room is actually fine. It's okay. And headroom is very good. Got a couple of air vents here. You got another USB-C fast charger. You have a little storage area there as well, which seems pretty useless. And some map pockets too. Of course, quality. it's all scratchy back here as well, but some nice-ish parts and relatively okay door bins. Look, this isn't the best back seats in the world, but you're not spending huge amounts of money like you will in some other Utes at this class anyway. Okay, so now we're going to launch this thing before we take it off-road. But before we do, I want to give a quick shout out to us, CarSauce by. Just Google us. We get the absolute best deals on all new cars. I have a dedicated team of car buyers who go out to our thousands of dealers, make them literally fight each other to get you the best prices possible. And best of all, it is a totally free service for you because we charge those pesky dealers a fixed fee, which also means we go in the hardest to get you the best price possible. And of course, we can source cars literally anywhere in Australia. So join our many happy customers at CarSauce by. Again, just Google us. Let's launch it. Alrighty guys, it's time to launch this performance Isuzu D-Max. What will it do 0 to 100? Here we go. Going to brake boost it. Oh yeah, come on baby. That is some performance right there. I'm expecting a little bit more. Come on, come on. Alrighty, what did we get? Let's pull over and find out. Okay, we got 0 to 100 in 12.05 seconds. Look, is it the fastest thing in the world? No, and that's where I'm gonna leave it. Okay, let's drive this thing off-road. Alrighty guys, so off-roading now in the Isuzu D-Max Blade. I've done some pretty serious today, I'm not gonna lie to you, some of the most hardcore off-roading I've ever done. Okay, let's put the car into neutral. We're gonna engage the low range. That activates the low range transfer case, essentially keeps the engine at a very good RPM despite low speeds. And we are now in full low. And then as we roll, we're gonna engage the rear locking differential because we're about to do some pretty gnarly I'm not gonna lie to you. So before we do that, let's quickly talk about the stats of this thing. So now our ground clearance is 244 millimeters, which is actually quite impressive. We have an approach angle of 29.2 degrees, a departure angle of 19.2 degrees, and a ramp breakover angle of 25.2 degrees. And also an improved wading depth of 800 millimeters. So actually, all of that is rather impressive. And so, like I said, we've done some pretty hardcore stuff today, and yeah, this thing has handled it with absolute grace. I genuinely could not believe it, because I was here, the same place, literally just last week in a Mitsubishi Pajero Sport. While that did well, yeah, this did some pretty gnarly angles. So we're gonna go through some moguls here, and this is where you're gonna really see the articulation of the suspension, which of course is improved thanks to these new dampers. And despite having solid axles front and rear, it gets a lot of articulation, like surprising amount. And it can also get to some pretty gnarly angles before this thing is going to feel like it's gonna tip over. And we do have an off-road mode here, no individual mode, so you can't change it between like sand, mud, whatever. However, it does use a bunch of settings with traction control, ABS, to make sure that you can continue going straight, essentially. And really, it almost negates the need for the rear locking differential. And this is very much the case in a lot of new Utes. They do just such a good job without it, to be honest. Let's try out the hill descent control. So we're gonna let our foot off. So it's really hard to show you on camera because it does such a good job at stabilizing things. But this is, again, some pretty gnarly stuff here. And in a lot of cars, I really think this would struggle, but especially with these tires. They are really good, these rough terrain tires. Yeah, it's just doing a mega job. I will say one thing that this is desperately missing is the 360 camera, because there have been multiple times where I have not been able to see these big ruts in front of me, and having a forward-facing camera would have made life so much easier. Something that you would find in a Ford Ranger trimmer, for example. So I haven't loved that. Definitely feels a lot more analog, and you know, some people will prefer the challenge, but at the same time, you don't want to damage anything. Thankfully, because this thing is so much higher than a regular D-Max off the ground, and of course with its 3mm steel bash plate, it's actually done a very good job at not bottoming out. Not once have I bottomed out in this thing, which is quite impressive considering, yeah, many times has the wheels left the ground in different corners. So I gotta say, overall, I'm really impressed with how this thing goes off-road. It does a very good job, and this is some of the most serious off-roading I've done in a long time. And it's done a very, very good job. Alrighty guys, it wouldn't be an off-road section if we didn't have some sand pop up out of nowhere. So we're currently at Gulwa Beach, and we're about to do some relatively gnarly sand duning-ish stuff here. So obviously driving on the beach. We're in four-wheel drive high, of course. So yes, as you can tell, We have some pretty interesting sections to go through here, but I thought I'd just comment on what's it like to actually drive on sand. When this tire pressure monitoring system decides that it wants to work, it's currently working now, but it's kind of been on and off all day, to be honest, but we're sitting at about 19 PSI, 20 PSI for all the tires. That just allows us to have a greater spread over the sand surface because sand is very fluid, kind of like driving on water. I'm kind of like a god. It is quite interesting at the moment though, because we are kind of going where the water is starting to lap and meet the sand, but I'll try and put that in the back of my mind for now. But yes, this thing is actually really good on a sand surface, it seems, and you could probably thank the fact that it has wider tires. Wow, this is sketchy, we are right next to the water. It has wider tires and a wider track, so essentially we're just getting a bit more grip as we go across this and get dangerously close to the water. Definitely give your Ute a spray after you take it onto a sand dune like this. It's a bit of fun. Alrighty, let's drive it normally. Alrighty guys, driving the Isuzu D-Max Blade. Let's put our foot down, give it some sauce. Come on, baby, come on. Yeah, so first thing you're gonna notice is despite Isuzu calling this thing a performance D-Max, it's the performance D-Max. Its performance is quite limited to its off-road prowess because, yeah, it's not the fastest thing out there. In fact, it does actually feel relatively slow. The 3-litre 4JJ3 4-cylinder turbo diesel is under the bonnet, and I'll be honest with you, I do love this engine because it is renowned for its reliability, and there is absolutely no doubt that these things are very reliable. At first, they had a few different issues with their DPF, like it seems every manufacturer has, but it's proven itself to be a very capable, good engine. The only thing it's lacking is power and torque. It puts out 140 kilowatt of power, 450 newton meters of torque. Oh, actually, let's see how it performs here with its Australian tuned suspension. Actually very good. And of course the steering as well, because that's been updated. Again, feels actually quite good, and I'll come back to why in a moment. But yeah, it really does lack power and torque, and you notice that when you're just driving around. She's slow. She's quite slow. And that 0 to 100 kind of proved it, didn't it? So what about how it drives on the road versus a regular D-Max? Because the Ford Ranger Tremor, for example, drove pretty bad when you compared it to a regular Ford Ranger, mainly because of its external reservoir dampers. Of course, we have Monroe dampers here. They've extended the damper size, almost doubled it to 32 millimeters. And so as a result, you get quite a lot more travel, and the primary ride in particular, when you actually activate the suspension, is actually quite soft and good. Of course, the secondary ride, especially when you're unladen like we are now, there is no weight in the back, doesn't really activate the leaf spring suspension, and yeah, this thing does ride relatively firm, but it's about normal for a Ute. But I will say, I came in with low expectations after the Tremor, but left quite pleasantly surprised. It actually rides very well, and I would go so far as to say it rides better than a regular D-Max, especially the LSU that it is based on. And then there is the steering as well, which, just like the suspension, is Australian tuned. In fact, Walkinshaw did actually change the feeling of the suspension and played around with the dampers. They went through like 30 different dampers, by the way, to get to the final ones. But when you are turning a corner, it still feels very much like a Ute. It's just quite light everywhere. It's not the most engaging drive, I'll be totally honest with you, but it is certainly comfortable, and I think for a lot of people, especially those who go out and buy an Isuzu D-Max, that's exactly what you're looking for. So overall, the package actually comes together really well. It feels stable on the road, and I'm not sure if that's because of the wider track or if it's just because it's an Isuzu D-Max, but they do ride actually quite well straight from factory, and obviously this Walkinshaw job here with the Blade, well, I think it just adds a little bit more pizzazz to the drive. Got to take into account though the fact that this is almost $80,000 for a Ute, so I would kind of hope that it drove well. The other thing as well is fuel efficiency. So this thing, it claims about 8 litres per 100 kilometers, something like that. And yeah, across this drive we've been seeing around about 9 litres per 100 kilometers, which is quite impressive considering that that is a mix of highway mostly and a little bit of urban. And then there is the point of safety. Now, when this first came out, it was essentially the first Ute that you could turn on the adaptive cruise control and it would drive drive you down a lane. However, as more systems have come out from mainly Ford and Volkswagen with their Amarok, unfortunately, this just doesn't really do the trick for me. It is a bit intrusive and also not that great at centering you in the lane. So yeah, when it first came out, it was pretty awesome, but now a little less so. So you can turn it off. I don't usually elect to turn it off, but at least you can do that. Alrighty guys, let's get into our final thoughts. Alrighty guys, final thoughts on the new Isuzu D-Max Blade. Should you be rushing out to buy one of these? And how does it compare to the Ford Ranger Wildtrak X and the Toyota GR Sport Hilux? I'll be honest with you, I'm actually quite surprised with how good this thing is. On road, it drives really well, actually surprisingly very well, better than a regular D-Max for sure, especially thanks to those upgraded dual chamber dampers. Off-road, it is seriously capable. We've been driving it off-road and it's been doing a good job. There are some weird build quality things that I still don't love about the interior specifically of it, but other than that, I think it comes together as a really complete package, and at its current drive-away pricing of $76,990, I really do think you're getting a very complete off-road Australian tuned ute. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments section below. Are you going to be rushing out to buy one of these Walkinshaw remanufactured Isuzu D-Maxes? And of course, if you want to buy one of these or any new car, make sure you buy through CarSauce Buy. Just Google us, because my team will get you the absolute best deals on any new car. Ciao for now.